The New Yorker prides itself as the blue-blooded bastion of literary journalism. Its pages are tailored to the sophisticated palate of American literati. So why then would The New Yorker be interested in filmmaker Paul Haggis? After all, he's hardly known outside of Hollywood. Even when Haggis's film career peaked 5 years earlier, The New Yorker could barely have been bothered, brushing off both him and his film Crash in a single paragraph. But suddenly, apparently out of the blue, staff writer Lawrence Wright goes to work on a New Yorker profile of Haggis. May 2010, Wright contacts the Church of Scientology, the religion Haggis admitted he'd only pretended to be part of for the past 30 years. Wright is offered open access and tours of any church facility for a story about Scientology. But he refuses all of it. He claims he's not interested because he's not writing about Scientology. He's writing about Paul Haggis. At the same time, Wright admits there was only one reason his editors signed off on Haggis, namely his one-time connection to the church, leaving church officials to wonder, is this a story about Scientology or isn't it? Over the next 4 months, Wright forwards exactly 3 research questions to the church, which are duly answered. Then in August, Wright informs the church his profile is ready to go to press and the New Yorker fact-checking is about to begin. For most magazines, this is a routine process to verify facts, but not so the New Yorker. This is a magazine that is regarded as the Vatican of fact-checking. It pridefully holds its reporters up as paragons of fairness and rigorous accuracy. But even they are subject to the merciless scrutiny of the fact-checking team, dissecting every paragraph, every sentence, every word, removing any shred of falsity until all that is left is 100% unadulterated truth. New Yorker editors refer to their crack crew of fact-checkers as the hidden heroes of journalism who toil in relative anonymity. But does the mythology surrounding New Yorker fact-checking reflect the reality of the process? The fact-checkers pore over Wright's piece, giving their blessing as 100% verified. They then enter the double verification phase, passing on to the church 971 facts for checking. 971? How could there be 971 facts for the church to check when Wright had only posed 3 questions through the writing process? Then again, 971 facts for a story that isn't even about Scientology? Nonetheless, the New Yorker gives the church just a week to respond, or Lawrence Wright's story runs as is. So, what are these 971 so-called facts that made it through the impenetrable gauntlet of New Yorker fact-checkers? One asserted the founder of the religion had been an aide to Joan of Arc. The church has never even heard such an outrageous claim. So they put together their own fact-check team to determine just where this supposed fact could have come from. Church researchers tracked it back to an internet site devoted to biblical astrology. Yes, BibleNews.com/astrology was deemed reliable by Wright and his meticulous band of fact-checkers. There is another similarly absurd allegation having to do with claims about the Hubbard family ranch. The church team discovers the august source of that one refers to themselves as, quote, eternal outcasts and heretics, unquote. Another was, quite simply, bizarre in the extreme. It sources back to a site that calls itself the soft underbelly of the internet, eviscerated for all to see. One that features pictures of cannibalism, autopsies, and corpses of every description. Not to mention boasting an archive of 80,000 images of some of the sickest, most twisted pornography you will ever see. And that's just a sampling of Wright's sources, all of which passed muster with the New Yorker's heroes of journalism. Surfing porn sites and calling it fact-checking? What would their subscribers think? Going down the New Yorker list, church fact-checkers uncover Wright's other sources, a handful of self-proclaimed anti-Scientology apostates. One of their alleged facts regarding claims of violence comes from the online rants of an anti-Scientologist and admitted perjurer turned Texas cult guru. The real fact is this: the cult guru was speaking about his own violent past. His resume includes episodes of shoving, kicking, punching, and his crowning achievement, nearly beating someone to death before being restrained by 5 grown men. Every incident the subject of a sworn affidavit, all confirmed by the Texas cult guru, and all previously published in a redneck southern newspaper. Not to mention the cult guru's arrest for drunk and disorderly on his honeymoon, during the time Wright claimed him as his source. As for the rest of Wright's sources, there is the guy the cult guru almost killed, now his best good buddy, who attacked his estranged wife and broke into his mother's nursing home. The lady, expelled from the church for sexual misconduct, herself once the subject of a physical attack by the best good buddy. The used furniture salesman who used to ride shotgun with the cult guru on his punching sprees. Then there's the cult's poster boy, also arrested and convicted of battery. At the time, Wright used him as a source. He's also currently the subject of yet another battery investigation, this one involving a weed whacker. And, of course, there's the husband and wife duo of Anonymous, whose frivolous lawsuits were resoundingly tossed out of federal court, and the couple ordered to pay the church $40 grand. Were these old friends of Haggis's who would regale Wright with personal anecdotes about the filmmaker? No. They were Haggis's new cult buddies who hardly knew him. But for Wright, that was good enough. The church team spends more than 9,000 man-hours checking facts, and by the time they get through all 971, a full 569 are proven utterly false. Until the sham of the New Yorker's fact-checking process itself is exposed. Because, in fact, they define anything their writers give them as a fact. And the checking consists of avalanching the subject with a deadline to disprove those facts. And lest anyone think eviscerating 60% of their supposed facts means the other 40% mattered, all that remained were banalities like these. The full title of the book is Dianetics: The Modern Science of Mental Health. It was written by L. Ron Hubbard. It was first published in 1950. The Church of Scientology was officially founded in Los Angeles in February 1954. So all the New Yorker had left was a long list of names, birth dates, and street addresses, now confirmed as fact, but which hardly made for any kind of a story, much less a profile of Paul Haggis. On September 27th, church representatives travel from Los Angeles to New York to present their fact-check answers to New Yorker brass. Seated at a conference table at Condé Nast headquarters are Lawrence Wright, editor David Remnick, lead counsel Lynn Oberlander, features editor Daniel Zalewski, and fact-checkers Peter Canby, Tim Farrington, and Jennifer Stahl. Having gathered more than 5,000 pages of documentation, the church lays out 48 fact-check binders and walks the magazine's staff through every inaccuracy and discredited source, all of which had already been sanctioned by the New Yorker fact-checkers. When the church finishes, New Yorker attorney Oberlander orders the now disgraced fact-check team to haul the binders back to their offices, dressing them down in front of church staff with a brusque, "I want to get these downstairs so I can show these guys how to fact-check." The Haggis profile is fittingly yanked from the New Yorker calendar, and one might have assumed the publication of record would have yanked Wright as well. But that's not exactly how the story goes. Wright's name is soon the talk of the town, specifically Frankfurt, Germany, and its world-renowned book fair. It's here that Wright's agents shop his next project. He's turning his as-yet unpublished New Yorker profile into a book. The announcement itself proves a sham, given Wright had signed a book deal before the fair even began. News publication codes of ethics characterize such deals as conflicts of interest. The New York Times, for example, prohibits staff writers from negotiating rights to an article before it's published. But when the New Yorker is informed of that fact, they respond by saying that while the Times policy is laudable, it has nothing to do with the New Yorker. As for the New Yorker's own journalistic code of conduct, they refuse to provide it. After all, who can accuse them of violating ethical standards they keep to themselves? Or perhaps the holier-than-thou New Yorker considers journalistic ethics something reserved for lesser publications. Publication of the Haggis profile was originally slotted to flank the release of his latest film. But the next 3 days barely stays in theaters for 3 hours, because it's a complete box office bomb with reviews that call it laughably, eye-rollingly absurd. All of which makes Haggis even more of a nobody for a New Yorker profile. But Wright and his editors are undaunted. January 2011, 5 months later, another 133 fact-check requests materialize from the New Yorker. And once again, they range from ridiculous to utterly banal, as in verifying the name of the church's advanced religious retreat, even though it's painted on the side of the ship in letters 6.5 feet high. All these questions from a magazine that, after 9 months, still hasn't toured a single church, even though one stands a mere 5-minute walk from New Yorker offices. Church officials once more ask Wright, "Isn't the story really about the church?" "No," Wright explains, turning on his pronounced Southern drawl. "This is a profile. As I said from the beginning, it's a classic New Yorker profile." But that's the least of it, because Wright still has a trunk load of tabloid tricks up his sleeve. He's got unnamed sources, just like the tabloids, the kind you never see in a classic New Yorker profile. He's got honest-to-God tabloid sources, as in a guy who admitted to previously selling stories about the church, one which netted him $10,000 from the News of the World. Yes, that News of the World. And he's got a cadre of self-corroborating apostates who change their stories faster than you can say abracadabra. All of which means when the presses finally start to roll, the New Yorker runs with an article that's the envy of the supermarket checkout line. Fact checks be damned. But then, for his final piece of journalistic sleight of hand, Lawrence Wright even makes his New Yorker profile subject disappear. Because when the story Wright still insists is a profile of Haggis is finally published, the filmmaker's name isn't on the cover or in the table of contents. No, the only name there is Scientology. The article drones on for 24,605 words and is universally panned as unreadable. But one needn't read too far to see it's not about Haggis after all. He was just Wright's convenient pawn for a long-winded diatribe researched on the dark side of the internet. But if Wright considered the internet such a reliable source, why didn't he include anything from the more than 4,500 pages on the church's site? Or, if he was too lazy to read, he could have watched any of the 500 church videos online. And as to just why Wright wrote such a mind-numbingly long piece, the answer to that one comes from Wright himself. Not during his only television interview after the article was published. No, in a moment of uncharacteristic honesty, he answers the question while addressing a group of journalism students.
I get paid by the word. Of course, that's why the story was 25,000 words.
So yes, Lawrence Wright is a hack to the very bone. Even paid just like a tabloid writer. As for what that makes The New Yorker, we'll let you decide.